She didn't rob a bank from the outside, she became the bank. For 10 years, millions of people trusted one of Vietnam's largest banks with their savings. They had no idea one woman was draining it from the inside. By the time anyone caught on, $12.5 billion was gone. Her name is Truong My Lan. She started out selling cosmetics with her mother at a market stall in Ho Chi Minh City's oldest market. Then Vietnam opened up its private sector in the late 1980s. Property took off and she moved fast. By 1992, she founded Van Thin Phat Group, and over the next 2 decades it grew into one of Vietnam's biggest real estate empires. Luxury apartments, 5-star hotels, shopping centers, prime land in the middle of the city. From the outside, she looked like exactly what modern Vietnam was producing. A self-made tycoon who understood where the money was going before everyone else did. But real estate is always hungry for cash. Every new project needs financing, every luxury tower needs credit, and the bigger the empire grows, the more it depends on a steady flow of money coming in. In December 2011, she found a way to get all the cash she would ever need. 3 struggling banks were facing collapse, and the State Bank of Vietnam oversaw their merger into a new institution, Saigon Commercial Bank, or SCB. Lan was brought in to help shepherd the deal. Vietnam had a rule that any single shareholder could only own up to 5% of a bank. Lan officially stayed under that cap. In reality, prosecutors said she secretly controlled more than 90% of SCB through layers of nominees, proxies, and shell companies. Her niece alone admitted in court to setting up 52 of them. She didn't rob the bank from the outside, she became the bank. Over the next decade, prosecutors said Lan turned SCB into her personal funding machine. She used 916 fake loan applications to pull money out of the bank and into her network of companies. At one point, 93% of SCB's entire loan book was going to entities connected to her, not 9%, 93%. The bank had millions of depositors who thought they were dealing with one of the country's largest financial institutions. In practice, almost every dollar the bank lent was going to one woman's empire. And it wasn't just loans on paper. Over a period of 3 years, prosecutors said she withdrew the equivalent of $4 billion in cash and stored it in her basement. $4 billion in a basement. The embezzlement itself was charged at $12.5 billion, but prosecutors said the total damage to the bank, including bad loans, laundered funds, and losses across 2,500 transactions tied to her network, reached roughly $27 billion. For comparison, Malaysia's 1MDB scandal, the biggest corruption case in Southeast Asian history before this one, involved about $4.5 billion. Lan's case made it look small. A machine that large doesn't run on autopilot. It needs people who approve the loans, people who sign off on the audits, and people who look at a mess and conclude it's not a mess. Du Tien Han was the head of the State Bank of Vietnam's inspection team, the person specifically responsible for checking whether SCB was following the rules. During the trial, Nguyen testified about a visit from Vo Tan Hoang Van, the former CEO of SCB. He walked into her office carrying styrofoam boxes. When Nguyen opened them, they were full of cash, $5.2 million worth. She said she tried to refuse them. Van declined to take them back. He left the boxes and walked out. For years, SCB kept operating normally on the surface. Depositors put money in, statements went out, branches stayed open. Millions of customers believed they were dealing with one of the country's largest banks. And Van Thin Phat kept building. The luxury towers kept going up, the hotels kept opening, and Lan kept appearing at ribbon-cutting ceremonies looking like exactly the kind of success story the country wanted to celebrate. Then, in early October 2022, rumors started spreading on social media about Van Thin Phat bonds and SCB's real financial condition. People started crowding branches across Ho Chi Minh City, lining up before opening time, trying to pull their money out before it was too late. ATMs were emptied. Staff couldn't keep up. The bank run spread from branch to branch across the city. Hundreds of people later staged protests in Hanoi and Ho Chi Minh City, a rare and significant thing in a one-party communist state where public demonstrations are tightly controlled. Lan was arrested on October 8, 2022. In the week of her arrest, 3 SCB employees took their own lives. The State Bank of Vietnam placed SCB under emergency control and began extending roughly $24 billion in special loans to keep the bank alive, nearly twice as much as Lan was accused of stealing. Authorities were trying to stop a contagious loss of trust from spreading through Vietnam's entire financial system. Police identified approximately 42,000 victims, all SCB bondholders who could no longer withdraw their money and stopped receiving interest or principal payments the day Lan was arrested. Some had put in their life savings, some had borrowed to invest in what they believed was one of the country's safest banks. When the trial opened in March 2024, it looked less like a court case and more like a national event. 85 defendants sat in the dock: Lan, her husband, her niece, dozens of SCB staff, and 15 former state bank officers, 10 state prosecutors, around 200 defense lawyers, more than 2,700 witnesses. The evidence filled 104 boxes and weighed 6 tons. Local media were given detailed briefings by party officials who normally operate in deep secrecy. The Communist Party wanted the country to see this. On April 11, 2024, the court convicted Lan of embezzlement, bribery, and violating banking regulations. The sentence? Death by lethal injection. The judges said her actions had eroded people's trust in the leadership of the party and state, a phrase that, in a one-party communist country, carries weight that goes far beyond the courtroom. Her husband, Hong Kong businessman Eric Chu Nap Ki, got 9 years. Her niece got 17. 3 SCB executives received life sentences. 15 former state bank officers were convicted alongside them. In court, Lan said, "I am so angry that I was stupid enough to get involved in this very fierce business environment, the banking sector, which I have little knowledge of." The woman who had controlled 90% of a major bank for a decade said she didn't understand banking. Then Vietnam changed the law. On June 25, 2025, the country abolished the death penalty for embezzlement. The new rule applied retroactively. Anyone previously sentenced to death for that crime had their sentence automatically commuted to life in prison. Lan's death sentence became life. The 42,000 bondholders who lost their money are still waiting. The $24 billion the government spent to keep the banking system from collapsing has not been recovered. And from prison, Lan sent a letter to authorities arguing that her seized assets were being undervalued and asking to personally oversee the liquidation process. Enjoyed this story? Leave a like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one. Now you know.